The glass hit the floor before anyone could say a word. It didn't shatter the way glass does in movies. One clean explosion, dramatic and final. It broke in pieces that skidded quietly across the polished concrete, catching the overhead light of the Hartwell Tower lobby, like something embarrassed to make a scene. The woman who had been holding it didn't flinch. She stood exactly where she'd been standing, one hand still raised from where the glass had been knocked, not dropped, from her grip. The man who knocked it didn't apologize. He didn't even look down. That was the first thing people in the lobby noticed. Not the broken glass, not the woman. The fact that Prescott Aldane III didn't look down. Prescott Aldane III was the kind of name that arrived before a person did. It preceded him into rooms, settled into chairs, ordered drinks. People who had never met him knew the name from press releases, from the business section of the Tribune, from the Aldane Foundation annual Gala that had run every October for 11 years and raised, as the web proudly stated, over $40 million for pediatric health initiatives across the Midwest. The name meant something. In certain circles, it meant everything. His wife, Celeste S. Aldane, born Celeste Harmon, which she had not gone by since 2019, stood 2 steps behind him, the way a woman learns to stand when she has spent 7 years being married to a name. She was thin in the particular way that required effort, blonde in the particular way that required money, and her expression that evening had the quality of someone who had already decided what kind of night it was going to be before she arrived. Their son, Prescott Aldane IV, called Rhett by everyone except his grandfather who refused, was 29, and had recently been appointed co-chair of the foundation's annual Gala committee. This appointment had been covered in 2 local publications and 1 national philanthropic newsletter as an example of legacy leadership. Rhett had not yet chaired a meeting that lasted longer than 40 minutes. The 3 of them had arrived at Hartwell Tower that October evening for a pre-gala cocktail reception hosted by the foundation's board. The tower's atrium had been transformed for the occasion. White florals, candlelight in long glass columns, waitstaff moving between clusters of donors, with trays of sparkling water and champagne. The Aldens moved through it the way they moved through most things, as if the room had been arranged with them in mind, which was why, when the woman stepped off the elevator into the atrium and the Aldanes happened to be walking directly past, the collision, minor, barely a collision at all, drew the attention it did. Her name was Zora Maddox. No one in that room knew that yet. The champagne glass had been in her right hand. Prescott III had been walking with his arm extended, gesturing towards something across the room while talking to Rhett, and his elbow caught her wrist on the backswing. The glass went down, the champagne went with it. The glass broke. Zora's dress, navy, structured, not what anyone would call showy, absorbed a few drops before she stepped back. What happened next took about 8 seconds. Celeste Aldane looked at Zora the way people look at a smudge on a window. Not with hostility, exactly. With the particular blankness of someone who has already categorized what they're seeing and found it uninteresting. "You should watch where you're standing," Celeste said. Zora said nothing. "This is a private event," Rhett added. He had his father's jaw and his mother's ability to make a declarative sentence feel like a verdict. "Are you catering tonight? Or, Rhett?" Prescott III put a hand on his son's arm. Not to stop him, more to redirect. He looked at Zora with the practiced courtesy of a man accustomed to managing situations. "We'll have someone clean this up. You can return to," he paused. A small pause, but a real one. "Wherever you need to be." Then he turned away. Zora watched them go. She did not say anything. She did not reach down for the broken glass. She straightened the strap of her shoulder bag, adjusted her left cuff, and walked toward the check-in table where a foundation volunteer was already holding a printed name card. Clot. The volunteer, a young man named Davis who had been working the table for 3 hours and was on his 3rd sparkling water, glanced at the name on the card before handing it over. His eyes came up, then back down, then up again. "Mrs. Maddox," he said. Welcome. The board table is. They asked that the board members be seated in the east alcove, if that's. I know where it is, Zora said, not unkindly, just as someone who had been here before. Thank you, Davis. She walked toward the east alcove. Davis watched her go. Then he looked at the broken glass on the floor, then at the direction the Aldanes had walked. He picked up his phone. Here is what no one in that room knew about Zora Maddox that evening, and what everyone would know by morning. Zora Maddox was 31 years old. She had grown up in East Cleveland in a house where, as she once told a reporter who asked about her background, the heat worked about 9 months of the year, and we considered that a good ratio. She had put herself through undergrad on a combination of scholarships, work-study, and a summer job at a shipping warehouse, that she worked 4 days a week from 5 in the morning until noon before walking to class. She had graduated with a degree in economics and a minor in statistics and gone directly into a financial analyst position at a regional investment firm, where she was, for her first 6 months, the only black woman on the floor. She left that firm at 26 to start her own, Maddox Capital Partners, Incorporated in Delaware, operating out of a 2-desk office in a building that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and had an elevator that only worked 3 days out of 5. Her first investor was her former economics professor, who gave her $40,000 and told her it was the best investment decision he'd made since buying his house in 2003. Her second investor was the Aldane Foundation. That was 4 years ago. At the time, the foundation had been looking to diversify its investment portfolio. The endowment needed better returns, the board had agreed. And one of the board members, a quiet man named Harlan, who ran a mid-size insurance group and didn't speak often but was always right when he did, had brought Zora's name to the table. She'd presented for 20 minutes. The board had voted 6-2. Prescott Aldane III had been one of the two. In the 4 years since, Maddox Capital Partners had grown the foundation's endowment by 31%. She had also, quietly and without announcement, become the single largest individual donor to the foundation's pediatric health initiative, a fact that appeared in the foundation's annual report on page 14, in a section most people skipped. Prescott Aldane III had never read page 14. Celeste Aldane had never read the annual report. Rhett Aldane had not known the foundation had an annual report until 6 weeks ago, when someone on the Gala committee mentioned it. The east alcove held 8 chairs and a long rectangular table set with water glasses and small printed agendas for the pre-meeting that would precede the reception. Zora arrived first and sat in the chair, second from the left, not the head, not the far end, just a middle seat that let her see the door. She set her bag down, took out her phone, checked 2 messages, put it back. The other board members arrived over the next 10 minutes. Harlan came in second, saw her, nodded, sat down next to her. A woman named Blythe O.C. Patterson, who ran the foundation's community outreach arm and had a laugh that could fill a parking garage, came in third and gave Zora a quick squeeze on the shoulder. The others filed in. 5 more, then Prescott III, then Celeste, who was not a board member but attended most meetings anyway, and then Rhett, who was now technically on the committee and therefore present. Prescott III sat down. His eyes moved across the table with the automatic survey of a man who is used to knowing where everyone is in a room. They landed on Zora, stayed there for a beat. He did not say anything. The meeting began. The Aldane Foundation's annual gala was held the following Saturday at the Sinclair House, a venue that had been a private club in the 1920s, a bankruptcy filing in the 1980s, and a meticulously restored event space since 2007. The ceilings were original plaster. The floors were the kind of dark walnut that took 3 coats of finish and cost more per square foot than most people's monthly rent. The floral arrangements had been done by a designer whose name appeared in 2 national shelter magazines and who had a wait list for private commissions. It was, in the language of the foundation's promotional materials, an evening of elegant giving. Zora, arrived at 7:14. She was wearing the same navy dress she'd had on at the tower. She had not gone home between the pre-reception and the gala, had spent the 3 hours between in a car on a call with Hurl's COO about a portfolio adjustment, and she had added a single strand of pearls that had belonged to her grandmother. She had not changed her shoes. Her shoes were sensible and dark, and she had been wearing them for 6 hours, and her feet were fine. She walked in alone. The man at the door, staff a volunteer, she wasn't sure, looked at her invitation, looked at her, looked at his clipboard. "This says board member," he said. "Yes," Zora said. He looked at the clipboard again. She waited. This was a particular kind of waiting she had learned to do. Not impatient, not performing patience either, just present. Occupying space without apology. "I'll need to verify." "Harlan Beckworth is inside," she said. "You can verify with him." There was a pause. Then the man stepped aside. She walked in. The gala's main room was full in the way that expensive events are full, not crowded, but occupied. Every cluster of people arranged in the unconscious geometry of people who know they're being watched and have opinions about the watching. The lighting was warm and directional. The string quartet in the corner was playing something that had been requested to be celebratory but not distracting, which the violinist had interpreted as Vivaldi at 3/4 speed. Zora moved through the room. She stopped twice. Once to speak with the director of the pediatric program the foundation funded, a woman named Dr. Simmons who had tired eyes and a handshake that meant it, and once to look at the silent auction table where a framed print she might have been interested in was already at a number she was going to let go. Then Celeste Aldane found her. It was not the kind of finding that happens by accident. Celeste had seen Zora come in. She had watched her move across the room, had said something in a low voice to the woman beside her, and had then crossed the floor with the determined leisure of someone who has decided to address something and wants it to look casual. "I wanted to apologize," Celeste said, "for the thing at the tower." Zora waited. The glass. Celeste waved a hand, a gesture that was meant to convey that the incident was minor and behind them, but that actually conveyed that Celeste had been thinking about it. It was. Prescott can be careless sometimes. With his hands. "You know how men are." "I don't hold it against him," Zora said. Celeste smiled the way people smile when they're not sure they've won a conversation. "Good. These things happen. And you work with Harlan's group, yes?" "I'm on the board," Zora said. A very small shift in Celeste's face. "Oh, right. Of course." She tilted her head. "I'm sorry, I don't think we've been formally introduced. I'm Celeste Aldane." Zora Maddox, nothing registered, which told Zora everything she needed to know. "Well," Celeste said, "I hope you enjoy the evening. It really is a beautiful cause." She said it the way people say things when they are concluding a conversation they have decided is over. Then she turned. She turned, and as she did, her elbow. This was not Prescott's carelessness. This was Celeste's own arm, her own motion, her own choice, even if she would never describe it that way, caught the strand of pearls at Zora's collar. The strand broke. The pearls came down fast, a cascade of them, hitting the walnut floor and scattering in every direction. They were small and round, and they caught the light the way only real things do, and the sound they made. A soft, rapid clicking, like a clock losing its composure, was quiet enough that only the people immediately around them heard it. The people immediately around them went still. Celeste's hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't." "Don't," Zora said. "Just that. One word even. Unemphatic. Don't." She crouched down, not frantically, not with the performance of someone gathering something precious, but steadily, with the deliberateness of a person who has decided what the next moment looks like. She began to pick up the pearls. One, then another. A man nearby, a donor, someone's husband, someone whose name Zora didn't know, crouched down across from her and began gathering them from his side. "They were my grandmother's," Zora said to no one in particular. No one said anything for a moment. Then Prescott III's voice came from somewhere to the left. He had walked over, drawn by the gathering stillness. What happened? The pearls broke, Rhett said. He was looking at Zora on the floor. Something in his expression had shifted. Not guilt exactly, but the dawning discomfort of someone who is beginning to question the map they've been using. Prescott 3 looked at Zora, then at Celeste, then at the pearls on the floor. We should have someone take care of that, he said. Zora stood. She was holding a small collection of pearls in her cupped palm. She looked at Prescott 3 for a long moment. I'd like to speak at the podium tonight, she said. I believe it's in my agreement with the foundation, as a board member and as a donor. Prescott 3's face moved through several expressions very quickly. The program is already set. I'll only need 4 minutes, Zora said. Harlan has my remarks. I sent them to him this morning. She put the pearls carefully into the small interior pocket of her bag. Then she walked toward the east end of the room, where the program table was set up, and where Harlan Beckworth was standing, with the quiet satisfaction of a man who has been waiting for a thing to happen for a very long time. The program ran as scheduled. The Foundation's executive director spoke for 8 minutes. A video played, showing children in hospital rooms and the doctors who treated them and the numbers. Lives changed, treatments funded, research enabled. A longtime donor spoke. The board chair spoke. Then Harlan introduced Zora. He introduced her by her full title, her full role, and her full tenure with the foundation. He said the word, largest, twice, once referring to portfolio growth and once referring to donor contribution. He said it clearly, and without flourish, the way you say a fact that does not require decoration. The room had been warm and buzzing. It went a particular kind of quiet. Zora walked to the podium. She didn't look at the Aldanes. She didn't need to. She looked at the room, at the director of the pediatric program with her tired eyes, at the young couple near the back who had come to their first gala and were still figuring out where to stand, at the board members she had sat beside for 4 years, at Davis, the volunteer from the tower, who had somehow ended up working the gala as well, and was standing near the side wall, with an expression of complete vindication. She spoke for 4 minutes. She talked about the foundation's work. She talked about what it meant to invest in something that outlasted you, the way money, directed well, became a kind of permanence. She talked about her grandmother, who had not had access to the kind of pediatric care this foundation funded, and who had lost a child, a son, to something treatable, something that should not have been fatal, something that was fatal because the right door was not open. She did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. When she finished, the applause was the kind that builds from the back of a room. There is this particular experience that people describe after a moment of public reckoning. It is not loud. It is not triumphant in the cinematic sense. It feels most often like a very long exhale. The weeks after the gala were quiet for Zora. She returned to her office, to her portfolio, to the 2 junior analysts who were working on a new fund structure and needed her attention. She did not speak to the press, though the press made several requests. What she could not control was what other people said and did. Harlan Beckworth, who served on 3 other boards in the city, mentioned the gala at a breakfast meeting the following week. He mentioned it factually, without embellishment, what had happened in the atrium, what had happened with the pearls, what Zora's remarks had revealed to a room full of people who had not previously read page 14. By the end of that week, 2 of the foundation's major institutional donors had asked questions, not angry questions, not accusatory, just the measured, careful questions that people ask when they are reassessing something. The foundation board held an emergency meeting. Prescott 3 attended. Celeste did not, because she was not a board member, though she had planned to come. The meeting lasted 3 hours. At the end of it, Prescott III submitted a letter requesting that the board consider restructuring its leadership to allow for fresh perspectives and new voices. It was a carefully worded letter. Everyone understood what it meant. Rhett stepped down from the gala committee the following morning. He sent a brief email that his assistant had written and that he had signed without changing a word. He spent the rest of that day at the gym and did not check his phone until evening. The gala itself had raised $1.2 million, the highest single event total in the foundation's history. The pediatric program director sent Zora a note that was 4 sentences long. Zora read it twice, put it in a drawer, and went back to work. 6 months later, a reporter from a regional business journal asked Zora if she would be willing to do a profile. Zora agreed to 20 minutes and then stayed on the call for 50, which she attributed to the reporter being unusually good at her job. At one point, the reporter asked about the gala, about the pearls. Zora was quiet for a moment. "I had them restrung," she said. "The whole strand. My grandmother had them restrung at least twice while she was alive. That's the thing about pearls. They're not fragile. They just need someone who understands what they're worth." The reporter paused. "Is that a metaphor?" she asked. Zora said, "I'll leave that to the reader." The strand of pearls sat on Zora's desk now, restrung, intact, coiled in a small glass dish next to her monitor. She looked at them sometimes, not often, not deliberately, just in the way you glance at things that have come to mean something without your permission. The Aldane Foundation had a new board chair. The new chair had called Zora in her first week and asked to meet. They had met. It had gone well. The foundation's endowment continued to grow. There is a thing that happens when a room full of people suddenly understands that they have been misperceiving something. A person, a situation, the order of things. It doesn't always make a sound. Sometimes it just settles, the way a building settles after a long rain, quietly, permanently, rearranging itself around what is actually true. Zora Maddox had not come to the gala to make a point. She had come because it was her foundation, in the ways that mattered. The financial way, yes, but also the other way. The way that has no line item. The way that exists in the reason she had said yes 4 years ago, when Harlan had called, when she was in her 2-desk office, with the unreliable elevator and a vision she had not yet told anyone in full. She had come because she believed in the work. Everything else was just what happened when a room finally opened its eyes.